We're going to reconvene our meeting with Agency of Natural Resources Secretary Moore, the budget. And I believe the presentation was completed before we took our break for the drill, and that Representative Stubbins had follow-up questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I know we haven't had a fee bill in a while, and I'm curious how that's impacting. I would assume it's impacting. Maybe it's not. I would assume it is, because I keep hearing from folks who work in A&R that they're being asked to do more and more with less and less. So wondering if you can shed some light on that.
Sure. So by A&R, I'm going to assume you mean DEC and may defer to John Beeling. I would note that we had a significant increase in park gate fees that took effect earlier this year, last calendar year. I think about June timeframe, which is predicted to raise about $1.5 million of new revenue per year into the Parks Fund. So I don't know that it's accurate to say that that's a separate process, I guess. It's done through rulemaking as opposed to a fee bill. But just know that we have addressed fees in that way in the agency. So assuming it's specific to DEC.
Okay.
And appreciating staff are under a lot of pressure right now. The agency's budget has roughly doubled during my tenure, largely due to federal grants and pass-through funds that we are administering. Many of those programs have come with additional staff, limited service positions. We've added more than 50 limited service positions, or been given ability to add more than 50 limited service positions to support the administration of these federal funds. We are not immune to the workforce challenges, most notably in our business offices. I think the technical positions have generally been easier to fill, in that I think people are attracted to the mission of the agency versus grants and contracts administrators or financial managers are needed in every facet of modern business. And it's a little harder to pull those people into state service when they can command a higher salary elsewhere. So we are struggling in that regard. I would actually say, unlike in past times, I think our biggest staff challenge is finding people to do the work as opposed to having positions available, like the positions needed, right? And John may be able to speak to this in terms of the ARPA funding. I think at this point we've filled the vast majority of the technical positions, but less than half of the business positions. And it's really an issue. In terms of the fee bill, happy to walk you through our environmental permitting fund, but we continue to run a positive balance in it. And so it's maybe hard to know when is the right time to raise fees, but as long as we're kind of making ends meet, I think the argument would be this is not yet the right time to raise fees. All that said, I don't want to diminish the stress that staff feel at A&R right now. It is an incredible amount of work that we're endeavoring to take on. Climate Office and Environmental Justice Unit being new components of work, both of which came with staff, but starting new things is always hard. And I really do think it's a reflection of the absolutely enormous amount of federal funds we are working to administer right now.
Related to that, so if someone retires or if you have a vacancy, are you able to post that immediately? And I'm asking from a perspective of when I worked in state government, like sometimes we had many months of deferral, and just wondering what that process is. When someone retires, the person I worked for had a very focused effort. She said, whenever something goes empty, the budget is taken away. So I'm just wanting to make sure that when someone retires, does that position go away? Is that vacancy, are you posting that immediately
So when someone retires, generally the expectation is the commissioners and division directors will review the position and make sure it's the best use to meet current needs, and complete an RFR, request for reclassification, if needs have changed. Some of that is also, people who have been career civil servants might retire at, say, an environmental analyst 9. And in reality, we may be best served by recruiting for a more entry-level position of somebody who could once again progress through the civil service system. That is something that's left to commissioners and division directors to work through. Our budget always contains a reasonable amount of vacancy savings. Rarely, if ever, we had resources to double fill positions. And so you do actually have to wait for the position to become vacant in order to recruit for the next person. I want to say that on average, we're looking at 8 to 12 weeks between when someone departs and the position is filled. So there is time in there where we're accruing vacancy savings. There were years in the past where, particularly in the early stages of COVID, where we used vacancy savings as a budget tool because there was so much uncertainty, but have moved away from that. And our FY24 budget reflects I guess I would say an amount of vacancy savings that reflects sort of standard hiring procedures within the agency, just the normal delay between when somebody leaves and when we're through the other end of the recruitment process. Some of those recruitments are more extended now than they've been in the past. We've had a number of positions recently that have had to go out more than one time for recruitment for want of good candidates, again, particularly in our business offices. So there's workforce issues bound up in an answer to that question too.
Thank you. But to be clear, like a past practice during COVID of holding a vacancy to sort of depress the budget, that's not happening anymore.
Not at my direction. I don't want to say that there aren't individual division directors or program managers that are making decisions in that regard in order to manage their own budgets. But it is at the beginning stages of COVID, I absolutely put out a memo and said no hiring without my explicit approval. And that's been rescinded. And so now, to the extent that's occurring, it's occurring at the program and division level.
Thank you.
So actually, I have a follow on that. I think, I'm hearing, like, I understand there's a lot of money going out. It's one-time money, but at the same time, our permit programs are under increased stress because of just increased development pressure that's happened. And I guess I'm wanting to know or get at, like, what's at the staffing levels in those programs change? I mean, if you're saying there's a surplus in the permitting fund, where is that coming from? Or
I wouldn't describe it as a surplus. I just say we're not running it into the red yet. So we're still living within our means. There were so-called administrative positions that were created as part of ARPA. Many of those have gone into permitting programs. So, for example, the drinking water and groundwater protection program has added staff in anticipation of increased numbers of applications coming out of the Healthy Homes program. We added staff capacity in the Office of Planning, which is part of the Secretary's office, anticipating additional projects through Act 250. I believe there's a staff person that's been added in the Wetlands program, as well as one in the Stormwater program. So we have, in addition to the team providing direct technical assistance related to the implementation of the federal dollars that are available, we have also added administrative isn't the right word, but regulatory staff capacity, so that we maintain our ability to work through permit applications in a reasonable amount of time.
I didn't hear you mention the on-site program.
That's the drinking water and groundwater protection program. It's part of that division.
Okay, thank you. Representative Sevilla and Bongarts.
Yep. The overall vacancy rate for the agency right now.
I don't know, but I can get that and get back to you.
Okay. And also noted the positive balance as a result of fees. And I think we're looking at a fee bill being reviewed this year. And so I would actually like more information on the positive balance in fees, what that means, kind of some sort of accounting or the opportunity to follow up with someone in agency on that.
Yeah, someone may actually be seated immediately here to my left. Commissioner Beeling can speak to that. And I think perhaps, and I apologize, Chair Sheldon, if this was the part of the presentation you were looking for today. I was just going to try to pull up a little bit of our budget overview. So I say that has kind of the funding picture for the agency. And I think it's important to keep in mind, part of the problem is none of our programs, maybe I don't believe any of our programs, I want to be a little circumspect, rely fully on fee revenue, right? And so there are questions that the General Assembly had put to the Department of Finance and Management about which programs don't pay for themselves. It's a really hard question for us to answer because there are almost no programs that pay for themselves within the Agency of Natural Resources. We rely on a combination of permit fees, general funds, and federal funds. We are increasingly challenged by flat federal funding. It has been flat throughout my tenure, and I think at this point it's been flat for more than 10 years, which means that the two places that make up the effectively declining federal funds as a result of inflationary pressure are permit fees and general funds. And our permit fund continues to remain in the black. I think reasonable people could look at different approaches for how you would determine when a fee bill was needed. But certainly the administration's review is that it isn't timely at this point, given the balance we maintain in that fund. I'm not going to be able to quickly pull this up. Oh, I know where it is. Just I have a chart that may.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't talk in.
It's good. It's fine.
PowerPoint.
Giving you a little space to find it because I know how that is.
You're not seeing my screen. All right.
Share screen. Does she have share screen? Yeah.
I think I do. I think I just have to make this bigger first. Then I can share my screen. Share this. So this is the presentation we're working on for House appropriations for next week. This is just the governor's budget, high level for the agency. But I think this is the figure that may actually, paints that this is a complicated picture, right? This is the different types, flavors of money that fund the work of the agency. We get more than $90 million in federal funds. That's across all three departments. We get about $36 million in general funds. And then the rest of these funds over here are what would be considered permit funds, special funds, things that come into us through tax revenue, like the gas tax. So it's a pretty complicated stew. And I don't want you to feel like I'm avoiding answering your question, but there isn't a linear response to what's being asked. And it's how all of these sources sort of level out over time that determines whether or not we sort of meet our budget target. And our first objective is to maximize our ability to draw down and fully deploy federal funds. And then we look to kind of backfill against that with our special funds and general funds to make our budget whole.
Representative Bonvard.
I'll hold off.
Representative Torrey.
Thank you. Just back on the workforce discussion, how has permitting been affected in terms of what the applicant experiences and how long it takes? Has there been a trend?
I believe the trend is paused. Sorry, John Beeling, Conservation Commissioner. I hear when things are bad, and I don't hear very much. So anecdotally, and speaking with my directors, I think permitting is going pretty well. I think one thing that's really helped us is we moved many of the permits to online application. And especially during COVID, that was very challenging when people were mailing things. We don't have people in the office all the time. That caused some log jams. But since then, I think things are going very smoothly. And the expectation is really everything's going to be online eventually. We're getting there. There's a few that because of federal requirements, we actually can't do that, strangely enough. But other than those, I predict probably the next couple of years, virtually everything's going to be online, which is way more efficient, and we can get the things out pretty quickly.
And we've enjoyed really strong support and partnership with the General Assembly in making that transition over the last 3 years with resources provided. We refer to it as ANR Online, and it's sort of our tool for accepting online payments and applications. And we've been able to make some significant investments in improving and expanding that system since the onset of COVID, which has been a gift to the agency that will keep paying dividends long past our ability to come back in the office.
One more question. I know you need to go, Representative Stebbins.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I recall hearing, actually, maybe this is for Mr. Beeman, but there have been times where different areas of ANR, like one will say it's okay, and another one won't be able to get to it, but because of the way the queue is structured, that projects can be delayed and delayed and delayed, or think that they're fine and then it comes back, and they have to redo everything. Can you guys touch on that at all?
So we have come up with a system. It's called Permit Navigator. It's an online system, and it's designed to really help people out. A lot of those times, someone will come in and they'll get a stormwater permit, and they'll find out after the fact, oh, I also need a wetlands permit. So that's really the problem. We're not really set up. And there are folks you can call to help you out with permitting. So we have live people you can call and say, I'm doing this in Montpelier. What are the permits I need? There's still folks who do have that job, but we also have an online capability. So we're trying our best to make sure people know the whole landscape when they want to put forward some kind of project, that they put in their applications at the same time. A lot of times it's staggered. So they'll start on something and they realize, oh, I got to do this kind of permit. Oh, I got to do that kind of permit. And so, each one takes a certain amount of time. If we get them all in the door at the same time, they should move forward pretty consistently. Some permits, frankly, are less complicated than others. Some take a lot more work, a lot more engineering, a lot more. They're just harder. Some permits are pretty straightforward. Just like show us this and we can issue. But so that's the effort, is to try to make sure people come in as comprehensively as possible. So we can.
And we do also, through the Office of Planning, that's Billy Coster's team in the Secretary's office, offer what I would sort of refer to as a concierge service for larger, really complex projects, particularly ones that go beyond DEC and also implicate some of the interests of Fish and Wildlife or other agencies of state government. And do quite a bit of outreach to folks, encouraging them, for example, regular meetings with the ski areas, presentations at Renewable Energy Vermont, working with housing developers, working with the electricity utilities to encourage them to come in early when they have big projects in the offing, like even before they're kind of fully developed, to give us a heads up so that we can start to work through the process with them. It's a learning experience for all of us, but I think in general, people are taking us up on that offer more and more. And it is not only to their benefit, I think it's to our benefit too.
Thank you for coming in.
You're welcome.
We may very well ask you to join us again.
Oh, I am always happy to.
Can we get that?
Thank you.
Slide set?
You do have it.
Oh, we have it.
I actually
Okay.
emailed it out to everyone
Oh,
last
okay.
night. That's what I sent him. That we reached out to our appropriations.
Oh, and you got the budget book.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yes.
I highly recommend members review those documents and then see if you have further questions on the budget.
Yeah, I apologize for the misunderstanding and I'm happy to come back.
Yeah, me too. Let us take a 5-minute break and we can transition to our next witness.